Later this week, the left government in Kerala will be organizing the global Ayyappa conference. One of those who's going to be attending this will be Tamil Nadu Minister, Mr. Thiaga Rajan, who's joining us now to talk about not just that, but also various aspects of Tamil Nadu politics as well as national politics. Thank you so much, Mr. Thiaga Rajan, for joining us here at Times Now. And let me begin by asking you, Tamil Nadu Chief Minister has appointed you, along with HR&C Minister Shekhar Babu, to represent the state at the upcoming Global Ayyappa Summit in Kerala. Let me begin by talking about your family's historical association with the installation of the idol at Sabarimala, and at the same time, you're known as a minister of a party which vigorously advocates Periyar's ideology. How do you reconcile these two aspects of your identity, and isn't it true that tradition and ideology stand at two completely opposite poles in your case?
Actually, no. First of all, thank you for the opportunity. I think it's a very profound question, right? The ideology of Periyar actually is misunderstood by many. And at least as far as the social justice movement of the Justice Party is concerned, which we all say we are descended from, the notion of that you have to be an atheist or that you have to be a denier is completely antithetical to the movement. The movement which started with the formation formally of the SIPA and the SILF in 1916, the registration of the society and limited stock company, was the movement that pushed for the nationalization of the king's temples, the cultural artifacts which had been lost in the lineage of property rights over many centuries. So it was precisely because they were profound believers and they wanted to preserve the cultural artifacts that the creation of the Hindu Religious Endowment Department, Ministry, and the nationalization of these cultural artifacts of the kings and emperors' temples, which could not come through a direct line of title or pata, was done. So there is no inherent, I would say, at least for me, my family has been in the movement since the inception of the movement from 1916. My great-granduncle was one of the signatories and purchasers of the shares in the SIPA and the SILF. He was the founding vice president. From then till now, we have always continued to have faith in our own way. And I think the principle of the movement is much more that everybody should be allowed to practice their own faith in their own way without being hidebound or driven to customs dictated by other people.
Right, because your grandfather played a very important role in taking the idol across the state, even popularizing the pilgrimage as far as Ayyappa is concerned. And in that context today, when you see various aspects of criticism coming in, whether it's in the context of caste, gender, as well as religious nationalism, in the context of these current debates, how do you see this legacy?
Well, first, let me give you my understanding of the legacy. The nationalizations of temples in Madras Presidency led to the creation of what was then the HRE department, and then later became the HR&CE department. And Sir C.P. Ramasamy Iyer was one of the big advisors for the formation of the second act after independence in the 1950s. And the notion was always that we should preserve these as wonderful examples of our history, of our architecture, and also of continuous faith over millennia in many cases of these temples. If you take the shore temples in Mahabalipuram, which are the epitome of Pallava stone architecture, and they were the pioneers actually in it. In my family's case, actually, we can trace our history back to, because of the community I come from, we can trace our history to our common ancestor who moved to Madurai in the 1540s or so as the army chieftain and later the minister and prime minister of the Nayak kingdom of Madurai in the 1540s, and then he served for 3 or 4 after Viswanatha Nayak descendants, created many systems of administration. He was called Arinatha Mudaliar. And he, among other things, built the 1,000-pillar hall in Madurai temple and in Tirunelveli Ayyappa temple, in the Madurai Meenakshi temple. And then his son, Kalathinathan Mudaliar, built the Amman Gopuram and so forth. So we have a long history of association with the temples. In fact, that's why I asked for the Madurai Central constituency as my constituency, though I don't live in it. In the case of the Ayyappan temple, it was not part of the Madras Presidency. It was under the Travancore, it's actually part of the Pandalan kingdom. And because of various financial strains, the Pandalam kingdom had to kind of become kind of sub to the Travancore kingdom for financial reasons at some point in history. And the history is that maybe the Pandalam kingdoms was an offshoot of the Pandya kings, hence the name. But in any event, when the Travancore board was formed, the Travancore Devaswam board was formed in the 1950s, around that time there was a major fire in the Sabarimala temple, which till then had been a relatively obscure kind of hill-based, maybe tens of thousands of devotees a year temple. And so there was many efforts to renovate the temple, and different people made different attempts. My own understanding of the history of our engagement is that because we were close to the Pandalam family, they and some of the priests consulted some astrologers, the I.N.D.I.A. Josier, and were advised to go and ask my grandfather, who had already done a lot and been former chief minister of Madras presidency, to done a lot for temples, to create an idol and donate it for consecration. So I think many others did as well. Different stories come from different places, but the fact is that my grandfather and somebody called Nawab Rajamanikam Pillai, who was a dramatist, play person, again in Madurai Delta area in the south and southeast of Tamil Nadu.
Right.
Together kind of not only worked on getting this idol made in Kumbakonam near Swami Malai, but then popularizing it by taking it around different parts. And I have an interesting anecdote about that, but I've been talking for too long, so let me stop here and you ask it.
Let me get into the politics of this, though.
I'll bring in the other anecdote.
Yeah, there are several aspects of politics, although we've seen what the Kerala chief of BJP, Rajiv Chandrasekhar, has said. He's pointed out to criticism towards your party as well as CPM in Kerala. He says both of you have over the years harmed and insulted Sabarimala, Ayyappa Bhakts and Hindu faith. Pinarayi Vijayan has imprisoned many Ayyappa Bhakts. Stalin and his useless Diana's son have repeatedly insulted Hindus and referred to Hindu faith as a virus, amongst other things. So the question that then arises that with these comments that have been made, and is it a fact that we've seen such controversial remarks coming from whether Mr. A. Raja or Mr. Udayanithi Stalin, comparing Sanatan Dharma with HIV, leprosy, so on and so forth. How do you defend those comments?
Actually, I'm not in the business generally of commenting on other people's comments. I think for myself, my position, my legacy is clear. I talk for myself. I'm not the spokesperson for anybody else, nor am I know Rajan Chandrasekhar personally, but I have never known him to make such extreme statements. But to each his own. I will say it slightly differently. As far as the faith is concerned, as far as the culture is concerned, all of us who are believers and all of us who have some common shared history with this, we take pride in our contribution, of course, but we also understand that culture is fluid, right? Like the point I keep making, which is worth thinking about. We started nationalizing these cultural artifacts, these kings and emperors' temples 100 years ago, and therefore many of them are well preserved. Only starting in the 2005-2010 timeframe, the BJP government of Gujarat started nationalizing temples, and after that the BJP governments of Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh and all that. So the notion of preservation is already built into that. Even in their laws, if you go and see the explanatory note in the Gujarat Assembly, they say the same thing, to provide equitable access to ensure that these cultural artifacts are properly maintained, etc. This was the logic we did in 1920. So, at some level, we were the precursors for keeping the faith going. So at some level, I don't see this as political. People of faith celebrate each other's beliefs. A good believer is one who has, in my mind, empathy and tolerance for other believers. And this notion that my way is the right way and everybody else must be the wrong way, I think is antithetical to the notion of good believers, Hindus or otherwise.
Okay. A few questions on Tamil Nadu politics before I let you go, sir. One, of course, aspect that DMK stands very well has been against Hindi imposition. But there are certain comments that have raised a lot of controversy where many perceive this as being openly hostile against North Indians. DMK Minister Mr. Durai Murugan has quoted controversy where he says Tamil Nadu is not Bihar while commenting on SIR. We've also seen a similar controversy from the Kerala State Unit of Congress, which had compared BD with Bihar in a social media post. Does it worry you that such rhetoric is often normalized in our political discourse?
Yeah, I don't think the SIR comment should be seen as a function of anything to do with Hindi. I have a very clear and profound view that it is not in the interests of the people of Tamil Nadu to have a compulsory three-language formula. That view is informed by the NEP of 1968, by the NEP of 1988, redone 1992, and the failures that are acknowledged in those parliament passed bills as opposed to this NEP, which is not even tabled in the parliament, where they have said we can try to do all these things, but the ability to get the right kind of teachers to teach Hindi in Tamil Nadu or to teach Tamil in Uttar Pradesh is just not in the realm of possibility. The states are not able to execute on these things. You can have a policy, it's not doable. I believe that under the system we have today, were we to try and teach a third language compulsorily, it would be a disastrous decline in the quality of education. That is my understanding. 4 degrees and 30 years of expat experience and smattering of ability to speak 4 or 5 languages. Whoever wants to learn whatever, we are happy for them to learn. I'll go one step further. There was a journalist from one of the Delhi big groups, I forget, Wire or Print or something like that. They came and they wanted to interview me. And I said, sure. And he said, we go around the state and we find that there is a lot more Hindi being spoken because there's a lot of labor that has come from northern India, and in order to keep the labor management connect or the proprietor kind of worker connect, or call it what you want, a lot of people are speaking Hindi. So I said, so what do you want me to do? He said, does that worry you? I said, why? Did I say that Hindi is like a disease that I'm worried that is going to spread without my control? Whatever the market decides is a necessary language, I'm more than happy for it to happen. If you say, I have to force it down the throats of every child who goes to a government school and dilute the curriculum by increasing the number of subjects and whether or not I can get good teachers, then I have a view. That is a policy view. And data and history proves me right. If you say the market is naturally increasing the usage of Hindi, so be it. How is that a negative to me? Why should I complain? I have nothing wrong. I have no problem with that. Let it be what it is.
We've seen what the Supreme Court has to say as far as the WAQF Amendment Bill is concerned. Previously, DMK had called the amendment bill an attempt to usurp the properties of the Muslim community. Court has justified certain provisions such as the mandatory registration of WAQF properties by highlighting years of misuse and the need of transparency. Of course, all aspects of this have not been upheld. But in light of court's emphasis on preventing quote-unquote arbitrariness and also promoting accountability, how does the DMK now look at this entire WAQF Amendment Bill?
Look, our principles are our principles. If there are nuances about particular aspects or particular issues or particular examples, then they are what the court says they are. Our principles are very, very clear. And in my case, at least, the profound principle is that the government of India continues to legislate in 2 really damaging ways as far as the country and its future are concerned. First, they continue to legislate into state subjects aggressively, not mindful of the constitutional separation of what is in the concurrent list, what is in the state list, and what has been the norms under which the concurrent list is actually managed in education, for example, or health. And the second is that many of these legislations are brought overnight, are brought without any real discussion, are brought in a way that is seen or perceived naturally by people who are the wrong end of the stick, that this is intended to be a division creator, intended to be a kind of, kind of murky water stirrer. And the normal legislative process, if it's something, that is major like 370 or electoral bonds or WAQF or whatever it is, there should be some natural discussion. Anyway, you have a majority in the parliament. Why don't you let there be a good discussion? Why don't you refer it to committee? Why don't people think about it? Why do you have to do this? I bring the bill tonight and I pass it tomorrow with the uproar and walking out. So the process of legislation has deteriorated in my perspective.
But the WAQF bill did go through that process. There was a committee, it was debated.
Is every aspect of every bill perfectly right or perfectly wrong? Of course not. There's going to be good and bad aspects of different things.
No, but I'm saying the WAQF bill did go through that process of a parliamentary committee sifting through it, debating various aspects of it, and finally the law was passed by
except in this case, the parliamentary committee didn't take, my understanding, at least my understanding is that it was not quite the kind of normal give and take parliamentary process, because the parliamentary committee didn't take the inputs of the non-BJP members at any value, and they didn't even record any of the submissions into the final statement. That's my understanding. Maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, my view is that over the last 12 years of this government, the legislative process has deteriorated quite a bit in a lot of instances. You know there are enough records of that.
All right, Mr. Thiaga Rajan, thank you so much for taking the time out, sir, and speaking to us here at Times Now.